What's going on, YouTube family? Today we're going to be talking about how the auto loan crisis is getting even worse, especially now with all these mass deportations. Now, we're going to talk about how subprime banks are absolutely losing their mind and why dealerships are actually folding up and going out of business because of this. Now, if you're new to my channel, I've been in the automotive industry for over 20 years. I've owned a dealership, rental car companies, body shops, all that other fun stuff. But the last few years, I've been buying and selling auto loan portfolio. I would go to different small dealerships and I would buy their auto loans from them. We would bundle them up, rate them, and then I would sell them off to either larger banks or hedge funds or anybody else that wanted to put it in their investment portfolio. And this is something that's just a part of the business that's been going on for years. But over the last few years, nobody wanted to buy auto loan portfolio because it was absolutely horrendous. People were lending crazy amounts. People were defaulting at a record rate. But what if I were to tell you that there's one demographic of portfolio paper that every single bank wanted? And that was immigrant paper, especially Latino paper. Now, this is going to sound funny, and I know nobody on YouTube's even talked about this, but everybody wants Latino paper. Now, the Hispanic community is very tight-knit, and they tend to pay their bills about 37% more than the average American. So imagine this. If a bank literally lines up 100 Americans, no matter where they're from, nationality, or whatever else, or income level, and we lined up 100 Latinos that just moved here to the United States, the banks would always pick the Latinos because they have a higher rate of paying. Not only that, they have a higher rate of paying interest. So they will pay a higher interest and not really complain or refinance it compared to the average American. It's always looking to get lower interest or refinance it. And that's why banks love immigrant portfolio, because it pays more and they pay on time. Now, I know this is hard to swallow, especially most Americans. You're like, well, I got an 800 credit score and I got this, but this is just the fact of the matter. And if there's any bankers watching this, please comment in the section below and let me know what type of things you guys do for Latino buyers. Now, there's a big difference when it comes to an American buying a car and somebody that's like a Latino buyer or an immigrant. Now, if you come to my dealership 2 years ago with your proof of income, your proof of residency, we're going to want 20 references. We're going to want proof of ID, proof of social, all this stuff. We're going to verify everything, just double check everything to make sure that you're a qualified individual to buy that car. Now, if you're a Latino customer, you don't have to have a social. You don't have to have a driver's license. As long as you have a matricula, a passport, and an ITIN number, they would finance you. And a lot of times they would finance you at a much higher rate. So if I had a Latino that wanted to buy a truck on my lot, they would give me 135% of LTV, and they would get this guy at anywhere between 18 and 25% because they knew that the guy would pay for it. They would find some way to make money to pay for this car. I know this sounds crazy, but that's just the way the banks are. But at the same car, with the same bank, with just a different customer, just your average American buyer, they would do 90% LTV. They would require a big down payment, massive steps, proof of income, proof of bank references, everything. They would verify everything before they would give you a dollar. And this is something now that's affecting the market totally, because as I talk to a lot of people in our groups that do buy here, pay here, and other things, they're struggling right now because a lot of their customers, which are their best customers, Latino paying customers, are actually giving their cars back and either leaving or unfortunately getting deported. And so this is leading to massive amounts of fall-offs when it comes to buy here, pay here dealerships portfolio performance. I'm getting all kinds of calls now of people trying to sell the portfolios, but when you see Latino customers defaulting or giving back their cars, it's a really bad sign, letting you know that unfortunately they're either leaving or they're just giving back their cars. They don't want to deal with it anymore. And we're seeing this at a much more rapid pace. So now, with the record high delinquencies and deficiencies, subprime banks' number one lean on person for these issues to basically outrun their bad debt were immigrants or Latino paper. And unfortunately, these customers are not coming out and buying cars. I've seen it myself personally. A lot of the cars that I used to sell with types of issues and stuff like that, it usually was the Latino buyers that would buy them because they would fix them up and do whatever else with it. But now average American dealers don't want to buy these cars. I take them to wholesale auctions. They just sit there, run multiple times. My run-through sales rate is pretty much decreased by 50% because there are no more Latino dealers buying these types of cars. Now, I used to love buying this stuff. I used to fix them all up and make them perfect, and I would sell them at the auction. I'd make a couple $100. But if I sold them as is, where is, and kept the price low, I would make more money with less headache. And so this was one of the business principles I would do with wholesaling cars. But unfortunately, now that the Latino market is gone, they're not buying cars. They're not basically entering in the market. And we're starting to affect that in a major way here in the automotive industry. Now, let's talk a little bit about subprime banks and how they're losing their minds. Now, like I said, they usually get immigrant paper or Latino paper to offset their bad paying books. But unfortunately, they're not getting it anymore because these people are not going out and buying cars. They're either worried about getting deported or they're just keeping all their cash just in case to see what happens. And so now that this is affecting their bottom line, they're going out of their way to really target these people and give them low interest rates. Now, traditionally, if we were to sell a Latino with no driver's license, no social security, it would be 18 to 15%. I've seen rates now as low as 10%. They're doing whatever they can to get the immigrant community back into buying cars and putting them on the books so they could finance stuff. They're waiving proof of income, proof of residency. I've seen them waive a lot of things, but it's only for this unique, dedicated group of buyers, which is shocking. Now, if you were to talk to some of these major subprime banks like Credit Acceptance, Westlake, Lopez, Vero, stuff like that, they will all tell you all at once that they are looking for immigrant or Latino paper. And so they're even changing some of their lending strategies to basically get those customers back in the door. So, like I said, the auto loan crisis is getting worse, but now that we're having these mass deportations and, immigrants not really wanting to buy cars, it's really hit the auto sector hard. Now, it's kind of funny because my friend that does construction, I asked him, how is this affecting his business? Because I thought, majority of the people that build homes are immigrants. And he says he's doing fine. He's not having any issues. But we're noticing it on a retail level, which is fairly interesting because everybody thought that we would feel it in other types of work. So I live in Vegas and just about every housekeeper is an immigrant. A lot of the dealers are immigrants. And we thought that the casinos would clear out and everybody would leave, but they're all still here. They're all still working. We're not having any problems. It's just with them spending their money. I never thought I would see the retail market slow down this much. I think Amazon reported that they saw a net 40% loss in the Amazon days, which they've never seen that big of a loss ever in their history because people are just not buying. So we have Americans on one hand that are basically completely cash strapped. They're in debt. Everything's gone up. Bills can't be made, and it's just getting out of control. And then you have the immigrants on the other side that, that probably do have a little bit of money, but they're afraid to spend it because they're about worried to get deported. And a lot of them had to leave their jobs because they thought they would get deported as well. So that money is not flowing into the economy anymore. So it's fairly interesting to see how this is all ending up. Now, nobody thought that this would affect the retail market as much as it has, but it is, unfortunately. So you're going to see a lot of banks do some crazy stuff to get those customers back in there. And I know some people are watching this, so like, why aren't they doing more to capture the American buyer? And like I said, they're 37% more likely to default than an immigrant, which is crazy. And on top of that, they will pay much more interest compared to you. So I wanted to share this with you guys because I know nobody really talks about this stuff. And like I said, when I go around to banks and tell them that I have a dealership in Texas that's a buy here, pay here dealership that's, their audience is 90% Latino, they literally their heads will explode. They'll jizz in their pants because they're so excited to get this type of paper. But if I said, hey, I got a group of people out of Scottsdale, Arizona, it's a good group of people, and it's all Americans, they don't want it. They're like, nah, it's going to be overpriced. They're going to have to chase them. The cars are going to be going up for repo. They're just going to put a bunch of miles on them. It's just crazy to see how different banks react to these things. But anyways, I'd love to hear your comments in the section below. Let me know if you guys knew any about this. Also, bankers and bank reps, chime in the comment section and help let people know how this really is when it comes to auto lending and how they favor immigrants compared to just other people, which is crazy. I think more people need to know about this. I never really talked about it because it wasn't a factor until now, but now we're starting to see lending going the other way. And like I said, they're starting to basically skew more to favorable terms for Latinos compared to Americans that are struggling. So interesting things. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next video.